on,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'll introduce you, and then after you.
Okay.
I do think I was an entrepreneur sort of like from an early age. And actually I come from a lot, like my grandfather was an entrepreneur, my dad was an entrepreneur. So yes, absolutely. I think that it runs in the family. So we'll see which of my three girls picks up on it. What attracted me to New York City initially is just it's so diverse. There are just so many different types of people from all walks of life, from all parts of the world, different, ethnicities. I don't know. It's just I just feel so at home in diversity. When I first moved to New York, it was exhausting. I was just exhausted by the constant, chaos and energy and traffic and sounds and all that good stuff. I think that New York has always been on the forefront of many things. And I think, women over time, obviously, both in this country and in other countries, many things have changed, since I was born, and largely in very, very positive ways for women. Women are able to start companies now. Women are able to, do all sorts of, be in positions of leadership, do all sorts of things that previously we weren't able to do. However, I still think there's a tremendous amount of ground that we need to cover, because I think that while those things are possible, they're not the norm, right? And women are still, very underrepresented in many ways. All of this progress that we had made over, the last decade, the last century, whatever, a lot of it, it has been jeopardized by the pandemic and the fact that, a lot of women have had to take on additional childcare roles because of what's happening with schools, because of, lots of things. I used to be an academic. I spent 10 years in academia at Harvard and MIT. And part of what I realized being a cognitive neuroscientist was that the human brain just has this inherent flaw called unconscious bias, right? And if you look at all the studies that have been done, unfortunately, we continue to not unwittingly, essentially discriminate against people that are not like us. Technology has to be part of the solution because, for better or worse, we live in a society that everything is technology, right? Everybody's on their phone, everybody's using digital this, digital that. And so if we cannot leave the area of technology and say, well, we'll deal with that later, we have to take that as a tool that at a bare minimum has to not perpetuate the problem. And in my mind, a tool that can actually help with the problem. And I mean, that's what we built. We built a system that basically is more fair than pretty much any other system that's out there, right? Including the human hiring system, which is very widespread. It's really small businesses that, are so critical to the community. I mean, we've seen that, across the board, whether it's like, mom and pop shops or, bodegas or, local newspapers or whatever it is, right? We need to support local businesses because they are, in my opinion, the fabric of the community. And I've always had a tremendous appreciation for hard work, for, not having anything, coming from that background, and really wanting to help people that were less fortunate than me, whatever that was, right? I mean, we all fall on hard times. We all have times that we need help. We all need to be picked up, right? And so if you're in a position to be able to help and to able to pick other people up, it's like your duty to do that. And that's who your grantees are as well, right? They're entrepreneurs as well. So that's why it's so important, I think, to kind of loop back and have it be a virtuous circle.
Entrepreneur is somebody who builds the lifestyle that they want. Somebody who sees something, a plain canvas, and creates something out of nothing. Entrepreneurship is what America is built on today. We create jobs for people. We create lifestyles for people. Beyond the initial grant, my first ever Citizens Committee for New York City gives us access to their vast network of key decision makers, city resources, and community organizing knowledge. Be a New Yorker, for New York, and donate today.
Good afternoon, and welcome to this month's Citizens NYC Live Rethink and Rebuild discussion. We are so glad that you've joined us virtually today. And we at Citizens Committee for New York City are celebrating and honoring 5 extraordinary women who are working to rethink, rebuild, and reimagine New York City. I have my colleague Gina here, who I'll introduce in a second. But I just want to give you an overview of what you just saw. So this month, we're continuing to celebrate the New Yorkers for New York campaign. This new innovative take on fundraising, which was born out of COVID, has featured a virtual storytelling series focused on women's rights, entrepreneurship, immigrant heritage, and commitment to diversity. So our goal is to raise $1.5 million this year. Next Tuesday, we invite you to show up for New Yorkers. It's our final push to hit that goal. We're having a showcase event on June 22nd after you cast your ballots for the primary elections here in New York City. So we invite you to come celebrate with us virtually, and the show starts at 6:30. So let me just introduce Gina really quickly and then give you a little bit more background into who Frida is, who's our honoree for this month. So Gina is the Chief Idea Curator of Idea Manufacturer, a boutique business consultancy that specializes in small business creation and strategy. Gina has a client roster that spans 8 industries, and she's been working with us here at Citizens as well. She has successfully worked with entrepreneurs, companies, nonprofits, with a special emphasis on women and Black-owned businesses. As the architect and program director for the Lalani Project, Harlem's first business incubator for African-American women, she helps make entrepreneur dreams reality for more than 125 women. Welcome, Gina.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
It's so great to have you here. And I think you really have had a deep dive into our review process. So I'm just going to take a moment to give the audience a little bit more background on Frida Polly, who's our honoree, and then we can dive into the Q&A.
Sounds good.
So as you saw in the opening video, this month we're honoring Frida Polly as the entrepreneur. And so it's fitting that we have a host of entrepreneurs here today with us. Frida Polly is an award-winning Harvard and MIT neuroscientist turned CEO. She was named on the Inc. Today Top 100 Female Founders in 2019, one of Entrepreneur's Top 100 Powerful Women in 2020, and has received the MIT 100K and Harvard Business School Kaplan Life Science Fellowship Award. She's also the CEO and co-founder of Pyometrics, a company leveraging soft science and AI to make workforce decisions more accurate and fair. Dr. Polly's mission is to help everyone realize their true potential at work. So we're grateful to have a great lineup for you today. We'll be chatting about entrepreneurship, small businesses, as we've talked about, and why both are vital to the fabric of neighborhoods. So Gina, we'd love to just dive in. As we chatted a bit, you've been working to review our neighborhood grant applications, and you've really been deep in that review as part of the programs team here at Citizens Committee. Can you talk a bit about a few of the top line takeaways that you've noticed during your review? Are there trends or specific needs that have appeared to be more paramount at this time?
Absolutely. So working on the neighborhood grant program, it gave our team a front row seat to fear, financial stress, and anxiety. The grant applications under review were a cross-section of industries, inclusive of Uber drivers and the gig economy to small technology companies. A resounding theme came across throughout, and that was always financially focused. Either businesses were running out of cash or they didn't have enough cash on hand at the start of the shutdown. When corporate America closed, that also affected our small business community tremendously. Our eateries, childcare providers, dry cleaners, and even our private practice medical practitioners were affected. Business-to-business transactions between small businesses dwindled and almost came to a screeching halt. Several of our business applicants have been in business for more than 10 years. We read narratives that illustrated dreams being diluted. And while many were requesting funds as a lifeline for their companies and their personal livelihood, something that really was very New York about it was that they were concerned about the future of their employees. Cash flow with on trend is always a tender pressure point at any given time for a small business. Most businesses only have 27 days of capital on hand to run their businesses. The ideal is 3 to 6 months, but COVID made that statistic obsolete. The takeaway is the small business community needs more guidance around preserving cash reserves, which is difficult because the nature of small business makes that challenging. Another is employing technology. Several of our applicants had to quickly pivot to platforms they were not familiar with in order to keep running the race. So I would suggest, with that said, I also suggest that as we move forward, they not abandon what they've already started to build on the technology side.
No, that's fascinating because I think too about older business owners who don't have access that's as readily available, who just had to kind of spring into action. So that's interesting.
It is. And it's funny that you should say that because one of our upcoming blogs is about being part of what we call the business sandwich generation, because we find idea manufacturing in the middle of baby boomers and millennials starting businesses and trying to keep up.
So could you provide some testimonials, into why applicants and grantees feel that, these businesses are important to keep alive and also just important to their communities?
The best illustration of greater New York City would be puzzle pieces that reflected neighborhoods, and when put together, made up the whole of New York City.
Okay.
So when you put those puzzle pieces together, small businesses are the glue that holds that picture together. Most, if not all, of our grant applicants they were more like super glue when reading their narratives. So, we awarded a barber in Harlem that promotes reading amongst his elementary school clients with a reading center in the barbershop. Struggling restaurants prepared meals, not just for frontline workers, but for their neighbors who were experiencing food insecurity. Another standout was an environmental organization that hires and trains people who are deemed unemployable or ex-offenders. And those are just a handful. I mean, so many amazing stories, so many great New York stories, and true proof that small businesses really are the economic engines of our community.
It's true. And it feels ever present in New York, especially when you're kind of deep in these neighborhoods. And especially for the grantee partners that we serve, the majority are women owned. And so, it's kind of interesting to hear how our small business grantees are catering to the community in that way, like thinking even about literacy, and also servicing the community with haircuts, which is like a common service, but finding ways to weave in other needs that the community has, which may not always seem like it's on the forefront of let's say, like policymakers' minds. So is it possible to talk a little bit about some of the women-owned businesses and more specifically just about how we seem to service people of color and communities of color and how that shows up?
Well, the majority, to your point, the majority of our applicants were women-led organizations and representatives in the BIPOC community. One standout was I believe it was a restaurant that is woman-owned, and it had a nurturing effect. So that's to be expected from a woman-owned business, right? They were in the food space, and what they do within their community is I think that they're Spanish speaking, but they're the hub. This has nothing to do with their core business. They're the hub of communication within their community. So a lot of non-English speaking immigrants go to them for help. especially when it comes to terms of in terms of navigating the New York City education system on behalf of their children. So they step up and above what they need, what their normal business activity is. And it's reflective of several of our women-owned applicants.
Mm. Is it possible that this is more relevant to the community base that we serve? Like, does it seem as though folks come to us who are in need of resources where they can't get it anywhere else? I know that we preach that, but does it appear when you look at the applicant pool that this is the type of applicants that typically come to us for micro grants? Because again, as a reminder for folks that are watching, Citizens gives out awards, micro grants. And so it's not like a huge grant to run a major operation. To your point in that example, it really is sometimes women coming together who just need a little bit of support, like a little boost to get the resources that they need to meet the needs that are in their community. So is it possible that it's more relevant to the community base that we serve? Or based on your background, have you seen that this is kind of what small business models look like here in New York City?
It's a little bit of both, actually. I mean, if it's a woman-owned business or a business owned by a person of color, they both often face the same obstacles in business. Mm-hmm. So, far too often the business creation is relevant or reflective of historical issues that plague the BIPOC community and women. Also, far too often, these same businesses are undercapitalized due to being self-funded. It's amazing how both of those two buckets face the same challenges. So it's not new, but the pandemic certainly put a bright light on an existing problem.
It certainly. I mean, it's interesting for folks that are watching. Our neighborhood business grant program was born out of COVID, and so we're learning as we go. Truly, trying to listen to our grantees and get an understanding of the issues that they face and the resources that are needed. And so, Gina, this is a non-related question to our grantee pool specifically, but you've been doing this work in Harlem for a while now. So we'd love to hear you chat about kind of, in comparison to business needs in the past, you talked about technology being a need that folks are, raising more often, voicing more often. But are there other needs? Are you finding that folks are looking for staffers for delivery services? Just based on your experience in the past, given this current time, like what are some key differences?
One thing that's super necessary, yes, everyone is looking for employees right now. I don't know where they all went, but it's true. I mean, there's really a serious employment issue out there, and it's the reverse of the norm right now. Normally people are looking for jobs and fighting for minimal positions. Right now, there are tons of positions out there at every level that employers, especially in the small business community, cannot find employees to fill. But when it comes to need, I would love to see more programming for the small business community. I mean, there's a lot out there. I would like to see those groups even make more cohesive programming amongst each other. Entrepreneurship is a pathway to wealth building and generational wealth. So we need more dedicated players to come up with a common game plan to make that path a smooth one. Education and mentorship is at the forefront, because when all of these grant applications were available to people, a lot of people in the small business community had a difficult time navigating the grant process. Citizens has a fairly simple and direct application, but that was not the case across the board.
Can you talk more about that? Just in terms of like not having previous experience filling out grants, or just not having like the training and understanding of how to fill it out?
A little bit of both again. A lot of small business owners are really busy working in their businesses and not on their businesses. When it comes to organization, and there's no blame. I mean, I know what it's like to be a small business. A lot of folks, their record keeping's not great. Finding information that was required for grants couldn't be found. So I think that one of our takeaways for our small business community is to step up on the record keeping, but also for someone to provide a template of sorts to help people for the future.
I think that's what's so unique about our organization, and I'm glad that you pointed that out. I remember when the pandemic we were probably in summer of last year, so we were still in the middle of the pandemic, but there were reports coming out that small business owners were applying for federal grants from the government, and really either getting denied, especially from banks, or having a really hard time, to your point, kind of understanding that language, never really having to do that. So the hope is that it's been a learning opportunity for folks. But can you share a little bit about Citizens Committee's Neighborhood Business Grant, and just an overview of how it increases access for folks who typically may be denied or typically may not qualify for more federal, larger grants?
So a lot of the businesses that applied are what we would call small or micro businesses, but again, important to their communities and a lifeline in many respects. So the Neighborhood Business Grant provided access to a micro grant. It was up to $10,000. That was a bridge of sorts, because even with businesses that could put together some funding to keep them afloat, it wasn't enough to help them with marketing, with having to retrofit their businesses, with accessing PPE equipment. So the Citizens Grant was that bridge to help fill in that gap.
That's really great, and I do want to note that our applications have closed, but I love that you gave that explanation for folks, because we will be opening applications again this fall, and just be on the lookout for that. Actually, you can go to our website if you're interested in starting a business, or if you have an idea and you kind of want to better understand what's needed as far as resources go. In order to apply for our grant, you can visit our website at citizensnyc.org/grantmaking. Again, our applications are closed right now, but you can view our applications and kind of get a sense of whether you apply, whether you could apply or not. So thank you, Gina. This has been great.
My pleasure.
We'll chat with you more. We're going to bring on two of our grantees, but would really love for you to hang tight so we can chat a little bit more with you towards the end of the show.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Well, if you're just tuning in, this month is our final month celebrating the New Yorkers for New York campaign. Our goal is to raise $1.5 million this year so that we can help New Yorkers get back on their feet. We have an incredible showcase event that'll take place next Tuesday, June 22nd, starting at 6:30 p.m. You can text the word New York to 833-660-2269 or go to citizensnyc.org/New Yorkers to get full access to find out how you can donate. So stay tuned for a brief intermission. We actually have a great video for you from one of our recent grantee awardees from Harlem, which is where Gina is from, called Harlem Experience. And we'll be right back with our next set of panelists. Again, that was one of our recent Neighborhood Business Grant Award recipients, Harlem Experience. So joining us now are two of our also recent Neighborhood Business Grantee partners. We have Ronicia Joffrey who's the CEO and founder of 21 Ethos. She's a Queens native. Ronicia is passionate about children and technology. She founded 21 Ethos with the mission of bringing these two worlds together. So 21 Ethos helps prepare students with the technical skills needed to pursue careers in STEM. Welcome, Ronicia.
Go away, you're live.
And we also have, welcome, Ronicia. We also have Josie with us today, who's the founder and president of Slice Wireless Solutions, or Slice Wi-Fi. It's a company established in NYC in 2017 to provide free public Wi-Fi in public areas like event locations, parks, downtown areas, education, and healthcare institutions, airports, and more. Slice Wi-Fi believes everyone should have access to Wi-Fi, as it has the potential to connect you to every connected person, place, and thing on the planet. So welcome, Josie and Ronicia. So glad you both can be here with us today.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
So let's dive in. Ronicia, I'll start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about your company, what you're up to right now, and if any changes have occurred or how you may have adopted your business model if you have had to during COVID?
Yeah. So I started 21 Ethos actually 3 years ago. Oh my goodness, time is flying. With the mission of helping kids in underserved communities prepare for careers in tech. We know tech is the future, so I wanted students to have the opportunity in order to pursue those careers. Throughout the pandemic, we actually launched our Staples Summer Program, which is near and dear to our heart. And it was so interesting launching it because a lot was happening during the pandemic, and we had to shift gears. A lot of our workshops and programming was done in school. And during the pandemic, we had to pivot into virtual. We noticed the digital divide between that time and kids transforming into a tech-based sort of learning. And we quickly had to create an online experience that allowed them to also engage, as well as, throughout the summer, they were stuck inside, not really doing anything. We were in a pandemic. So during that time, it was important for us to create a learning experience that not only enabled them to continue learning the skills they needed, but in a also fun, engaging, immersive way that allows them to still connect and have community. Because also during this time, they weren't entering the school building. They were away from friends for long periods of time. So creating this program allowed kids to still learn technical skills needed, as well as still come together and have a supportive community.
So are you based in Queens, or is your business throughout New York City?
Yes, we are home in Queens. But as of being that we are virtual, we're able to reach other parts of the city as well.
Got it. Can you talk a little bit about Queens and just, what your environment has gone through during this time, especially as it relates to education and technology? You're talking about your program a little bit, but can you share just the transition that you've seen in your community, what transitions you all have been going through? Are your schools open for the summer or not yet?
For the summer, no. A lot of public schools remain virtual throughout the school year. Do you mean change as a result of the pandemic?
Yeah, just would love to know if, for instance, more folks were tapping into programs like 21 Ethos as a resource, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think a lot has changed throughout the pandemic, especially with students. Online learning and education have become has really soared throughout the pandemic, as a lot of people were looking to build on new skills. There was a huge shift in terms of the economy, and working corporate as we knew it. A lot of people picked up on new skills, and that was a great time for us. We're so grateful to have done really well throughout that time, because we were educating and building upon those tech skills that allowed people to pursue other careers or pivot into new positions. You know, they use this time to learn about other opportunities, as well as, you know, take a different direction in the career if needed. It was like the perfect timing.
Yeah, no. I want to bring Josie into the conversation as well. Josie, welcome.
Hi.
Can you share with the audience a little bit about your business and the community that you serve and what you all have been up to over the past few months?
Sure. So we're Slice Wireless Solutions, Slice Wi-Fi for short. And basically we engineer and install Wi-Fi. So to your point in terms of the change for COVID, and we used to do temporary and permanent Wi-Fi. On the temporary side, events, and on the permanent side, buildings and offices, and obviously those came crashing down during COVID. And what we used to look at as a kind of once in a while business, which was the free public Wi-Fi, turned into an extraordinary focus for us. And that was it. We really think our business has changed completely in that regard. While we're doing some of the other, it's the public Wi-Fi need is unlike ever before.
It's interesting to hear you both talk about how there's been a need for both of the services that you share, that you provide during this time. And Gina also alluded to that fact that tech was like one of the main needs for folks throughout New York City, finding resources and ways to keep people connected. You know, people say that necessity is the mother of all inventions, you know, but women don't occupy STEM actually and innovation spaces as much as men. So would love for you to talk a little bit about what it's been like being a woman in the space, both triumphs and challenges.
Right. So I think if anyone said that it was easy, that wouldn't be true. It's very hard. But I think technology is the great equalizer. You now have opportunities in terms of how you present, how you interact, how you are able to define your business and move it forward in ways that just weren't before. It was just you going to a meeting, shaking hands, and so on. And in business success, you'll find it's not a solo win, right? You have to have set up very good relationships and you know, having you know, better employees, and everything just needs to be a little notch above. And I think for example, with Ethos, what you're saying, it gives you the opportunity to reach out and have a greater pool of employees, and a more opportunity to build your own, you know, girls network, which you would not have had before. So I think I get this question a lot as far as STEM. I think it's kind of silly to think that STEM is only is you know, the sciences and technology and engineering, the mathematics. It's in everything, and people need to realize that no matter what you do, you are in STEM, and you can color it and pretty it up and make it seem like that, but the whole world lives, eats, and breathes in STEM. And I think the minute you recognize that, it's not going to be such a fear factor in terms of moving in that direction, or you know, not wanting to be associated with it because it's, you know, seems nerdy, which is actually very cool. But so,
Renicia, do you have any triumphs or challenges to add to that?
Yeah, I would say that now that things are changing so much, and you know, there's like a space for women in STEM, that it's a lot. It's been a very welcoming opportunity. There's challenges to it. You have to really fight a lot harder, and especially for funding and, you know, making yourself known and creating a presence as a woman and being taken seriously. You really have to like lead boldly. But it's been like it's been very fun and dominating like these rooms and learning the new skills. And I think for women, it's just about educating yourself and knowing that it's possible as well, that you can lead in male dominated industries. And I see a lot of women that they're moving courageously and just, you know, they're moving through these careers and taking on positions that traditionally women wouldn't take on in tech. So it's awesome.
Can you chat a little bit about some of the key indicators or the tools necessary for launching a career, whether it's just as an entrepreneur or specifically in tech and STEM? Ronicia, can we start with you?
Yeah.
That's it.
So I would say key indicators is being educated and understanding what skills you're trying to learn or what your end goal is. Tech is one of those industries that is very versatile. It's not really a one size fit all model. So you can have a technical career or in a non-technical career. So if you know that you're a creative and you enjoy design, you can also be in tech and UX UI design. If you could be in HR and still be in tech, but if you're more technical and you could be a software engineer. I think it's understanding what skill set you have, and then educating yourself and learning those skills further in order to pursue it.
Right. And I really think from that, you know, if you're looking to be an entrepreneur and be in a STEM industry on top of that, I think that's the easiest way to be an entrepreneur, because there are less of you, and it's actually in many of the industries and many of the companies out there, they're seeking to partner with minority and women-owned businesses. So that is an advantage in that sense. But you know, when you're an entrepreneur, you have the passion, you have the capability, you have the drive, and there's no escaping that. If you don't have that, you won't be able to align the bridges that you need to cross over. You know, you'll find like supports like. So all entrepreneurs love an entrepreneur. They have to be associated with entrepreneurs, and they want to help. It's a natural, again, as you said earlier, it's just a natural extension of the job of being an entrepreneur, is to be a bridge to those you know, around you and that are looking to succeed. So entrepreneurism is an incredible way to spend your life. Truly is.
I'm interested for either of you. Did you decide to become an entrepreneur when you moved here to New York City, or was it a desire that you've always had? You know, New York has so many opportunities, and I think it evokes this spirit of going after your dreams. So we'd love to know if this is something you've always had on your heart, or if you've been inspired since moving here.
Yeah, I would say I grew up in New York City. I've always been, New York City is one of those places that is just super inspiring. Just a melting pot of people. You see different people in walks of life. But what mainly inspired me to become an entrepreneur was solving a problem. You come across so many different people, and then you want to solve these issues that, you know, and provide solutions to different things. I think that was the key cursor in whatever business or venture I've ever started as an entrepreneur, because there's been multiple. But it's definitely wanting to solve a problem. I started with a problem that I wanted to solve, and that was like providing education to communities that didn't have tech programs. So it always starts with a problem.
Right. So for me, very, very different. My father came from a cattle farm from 1837 in Missouri, and we ended up coming out here, and then I started my career actually in New Jersey, and I found that I just was coming more and more to New York to get things done, to have my meetings, to build a vendor network, things like that, and eventually came here because there is nothing like it. It is the greatest place in the world to start a business. The everything's condensed. I can have enough business in 2 blocks, truly, to support a multi-million-dollar business, and it's just unlike anywhere else. And for my business personally, there is no other place in the country and where the infrastructure, the bandwidth infrastructure, what I need, to develop Wi-Fi, it's just unheard of, and for me, the opportunity here is just tremendous. So
let's talk about the pandemic just a little bit further, because I think there have been a lot of shifts for business owners. We've seen fault lines between those who remained employed during the pandemic and then those who did not. So one of the fundamental differences is access to technology. So we'd love for you all to chat about that resource gap a little bit. I know, Renicia, you've been really deep in that work in Queens, but can you speak to that resource gap, especially as it relates to the communities that you impact?
Yeah, for sure. I'm in the Queens community overall, and we realized, like, at the start of the pandemic, how much of a digital divide there were. You would see in certain career fields that they were able to adjust a lot quicker to remote life because they were either already working remotely and they have already implemented that into their business model, which would be a lot of the tech companies. The adjustment wasn't as harsh. It would be much easier for them versus your more traditional corporations that you would have to come into office every single day, and they had the more traditional business model. I think it was a lot harder for them to adjust to remote life, and they had to quickly ramp up a system in place where they had to work remotely versus companies that already had it implemented into their business practices. So it was very interesting to see also the age difference with the more traditional companies. You have your older individuals who had to now be thrown into learning about technology and computers.
Right.
So that forced companies to quickly adapt and have to pivot into, more remote practices and implementing a business in which they can operate from anywhere in the world. So that's the great part about tech. You can operate anywhere, you can work anywhere. And a lot of people that I've known that work in tech, they aren't really going back into the offices. They continue to work remotely, and business as they know it is just pivot into something differently.
Mm-hmm. Right. I agree with everything you said. And for me, it's providing that new location in which to work. It's just unbelievable. Parking lots are being turned into so that you could just drive in there because everyone's in the McDonald's parking lot now in order to get free Wi-Fi. So drive-in, the schools took over drive-in movie theaters. And as I said, the free public Wi-Fi, we're working with Related and HYHK right now in the Bella Abza Park area so that that's lit up. We did Asbury Park Boardwalk, which is a mile long, and it was really programmed just for the beach. And now they understand there's a whole new community need that, this year, for the first time, literal hardcore business work has to be done on the beach or will be done on the beach because they're not coming back into the city to work. So we're definitely gearing up on the free public Wi-Fi side. And the thing about New York, though, it is, like I said, the amount of bandwidth that's underneath the ground here, it really covers everywhere. And it is a tragedy. It's a shame, shame that the city does not provide everywhere the free public Wi-Fi. I'm working on, different initiatives here and there, but there's no reason why every single park shouldn't have a free Wi-Fi, or maybe the parking lot of the school should not have a free Wi-Fi, or, just specific areas. I know we were just with Deputy Commissioner Chauncey Parker of the community partnerships, and they are building new beautiful basketball courts everywhere in the public, revitalizing the public spaces and housing areas. And they said, oh, we didn't even think about putting Wi-Fi there. I mean, that would be, again, a great place to support, not just for the need of education and working, but for safety too as well. So, but we definitely have a long way to go. So,
yeah,
we're working on it.
Yeah, I would love to hear, Ronicia, your take on kind of dovetailing off of what Josie's saying. How would you suggest we continue to bridge these resource gaps? I think, like, your suggestion about increasing access in the parks, but even thinking about on the local level and thinking about educating folks. So would love for you to kind of dovetail, if you can, about any recommendations you have in terms of bridging that gap too.
Yeah, I would say my first and foremost would be educating, because there's a lot that people don't even know, even in terms of access to Wi-Fi. They aren't aware that they can go to these places in order to get free Wi-Fi. So I think educating the community is at its forefront, whether it's like forums or events or workshops that allows the community to engage and even just get their opinion on what their needs are and allow their voices to be heard. I think is very important. Especially in terms of like technology and how it works for small businesses too. There's just things that they just don't know because they're not in that world. So educating, I think, is at the forefront, or even providing some sort of tools or some place that they can go, a hub, maybe a tech hub or a marketing hub that allows them to easily access these resources and information.
Right, a hotline number would be great.
Yeah,
we get calls in our office asking for, is there anywhere that there's free Wi-Fi, or how can I get free Wi-Fi, or how can I can't afford Wi-Fi in my home. What can I do? So yeah, I mean, COVID has forced the family where they could have left. Sometimes they're forced to stay home where there is no Wi-Fi. So they're and that was a difference that COVID made. So it's so I think because of COVID, we're forced as a community to look at it and say we need to supply this technology leveler, this great advantage to everyone if we're going to really increase our ability to give people good jobs and have access to the good jobs, to have access to the better education, for sure.
This has been really rich. I want to bring Gina back in as well, just because Gina has really been deep in this pool of recent neighborhood business applications. And I know, Gina, one thing that you mentioned was that folks were interested in bringing tech into their business model and finding resources for that. So how would you suggest that folks find these type of resources, as Josie and Ronicia are speaking on? Are businesses suggesting in their applications that they need that education, or they just are looking for funds in order to tap into resources that already are existing? Can you provide some insight into that?
One of the first places I would suggest New Yorkers go to is New York City Small Business Services, because they have a directory of folks that can help, as well as programs to assist small businesses. with technology. And Google also is another decent resource when it comes to the small business community. They have a lot of free webinars around technology, improving your website and such.
I know incubators too sometimes offer those type of workshops as well. Would love, I know Gina, you've worked at an incubator, would love to know if you've seen those workshops recently, or even when you see if Josie, you have any resources similar to an incubator that you would recommend for our network.
Well, one of the reasons why I started with New York City SBS is because they're a central location to say, okay, here's this information, go to these folks for help. When it comes to, there are various incubators here in Harlem. We have Silicon Harlem, which is a great resource for technological help.
In Queens, we have Queens College Tech Incubator, and they're a great resources. They have workshops, programming that helps prepare small businesses with the tools they need.
Right. For me, I'm not familiar with setting up the smaller businesses, but I do know that all the carriers like AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile have now offered a very reduced cost for getting internet in the home for at least a period of time. So that's been kind of mandated. So I think it's down to maybe $15 a month.
That's great.
Yeah, good to know. Let's talk about the future. We've been talking a bit about the pandemic. Let's talk a little bit about the future. You know, what are your hopes for the future of NYC? What are your hopes for the future of tech and small business growth here in NYC? How do we remain resilient through this as we round the corner of the pandemic? Josie,
again, I mean, I don't see it as gloom and doom. I am so busy. I cannot keep up with the work and the change that, you know, is being demanded around the city. And so I look at it as different. I mean, I think we have changed. I think COVID has permanently changed us. And I think our what we were looking at before is not the same as what we're looking at in the future. The demand is different. It's going to would be incredibly hard to undo all that's been done in terms of move us forward in technology with working out of our homes and the idea that Zooming is an okay thing, right? And not having to be face to face. So we've started in tremendous strides. I think if COVID hadn't arrived, New York is a special bubble. I have to say we were in that direction already. So, you know, we're always a little advanced. But in general, I think that, you know, you have a chance now with all that's happened and all the change to, you know, the next generation or the next 10 years, you know, we've advanced so much, right? We would have been there 10 years from now, but now we're here. So just think of all that extra time you have to do something with and a chance to you know, dream of things you've never even thought of before. So I mean, I think there's a lot of opportunity now. I think you need to look for it, and you need to associate yourselves with the people that are going to give you that hand and point you in the right direction. And don't stop until you find that you know, that group of support that's going to help you get to where you want. In New York, there's no stopping a New Yorker who wants to do something with their lives. No, there is none. I see it all the time, and for me, I'm happy to help anyone who wants help. So
I agree with Josie 100 tremendously. Like, there's not even a number that I can put on that right now with regard to how I agree with you. I think I would love to see New Yorkers, New York businesses, especially the small business population, make a checklist make a wish list of all the things when they reflect on what they went through. Within terms of technology, I would love people to think of the Big Apple as the global Big Apple now, because this is also a time when the reach can go so far that your business that sits on a corner can actually service the world. And I want more people to realize that.
Yes.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I was going to say continuing to find ways to innovate, because we're realizing more and more that things are ever changing. And, you know, everything's not a one size fit all model. You have to be able to meet your customers where they are and find creative ways to keep them. It's no longer them just walking into your storefront. You have to go meet them where they are. Like, how do you create technology that allows your reach to go a lot further? How do you come up with innovative ways to make your business stand out? How do you keep those customers coming? And that could definitely be done with technology and, you know, not limiting yourself to just what you know as a business owner, but expanding your knowledge and what you could do.
Great recommendations. Thank you for your perspectives today. Very rich conversation. I love that we had all women on the panel today. So yeah, so I just want to say thank you so much for being here. If you don't mind, we're going to share your business's information on Facebook. So we'll share links to your businesses just so folks know where to reach you. But thank you so much. And thank you to everyone for joining us today. So Gina, Rosie, Ronicia, thank you.
My pleasure.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks so much to everyone for joining us today. Again, we want to thank A&E Real Estate and Douglas and Wendy Eisenberg Real Estate for helping to make today's program possible. We want to help New Yorkers stay connected. So be sure to follow us on social media to stay up to date on what's happening in your neighborhood. And remember to show up for New Yorkers next Tuesday, June 22nd, for our New Yorkers for New York fundraiser showcase event. Check out our text to donate feature. All you have to do is go to 833-660-2269. Just text New York to 833-660-2269 or go to citizensnyc.org/New Yorkers just to get full access to our campaign and find out how you can celebrate with us next week and to donate. Also, be sure to follow us on our social media channels at Citizens Committee on Instagram and Twitter, CitizensNYC. Thanks so much for joining us and take care out there.